Mom said. "You're not a real man if you work from home." And everyone laughed. I said nothing. Then I bought the house next door and invited them to the housewarming. That line rang out like a gunshot across the dinner table, slicing clean through the hum of clinking silverware and light family chatter. My mother said it with her usual theatrical flourish, wine glass in hand, chin tilted like she was delivering a monologue on stage instead of casually obliterating her son's dignity. The laughter that followed was instant and unanimous. My uncles, my siblings, even my father gave one of those wheezy chuckles he saves for sitcoms and belittling his kids. I didn't laugh. I didn't say a word. I just sat there with a calm expression, chewing slowly, swallowing bitterness with every bite. My sister, Denise, snorted and nudged my younger brother. "Guess Kyle's allergic to real jobs." Even that name, Kyle, it's not mine, but it might as well be for how invisible I felt at that table. They didn't ask about the app I'd just launched. They didn't know I'd just closed a partnership deal with a Fortune 100 company 2 weeks ago. They didn't see the money quietly multiplying in 5 different investment accounts, or the zeros on the spreadsheet I kept private, like a secret they'd never understand. What they saw was a quiet guy with a laptop, who never complained, never bragged, and apparently never quite earned their respect. That night, when the dishes were cleared and the wine bottles stood like trophies of mockery, I went home and stood in the living room of my high-rise condo, surrounded by glass walls and the city lights below. I took a breath and whispered, "Let's give them something to talk about." Not out of spite. Out of precision. This was the first thread in the unraveling. The first chill in what would become a calculated, quiet winter. But back then, all I did was nod silently, sip my water, and mentally take notes. The thing about being underestimated is, it gives you the sharpest kind of freedom. After that dinner, I didn't get angry. I didn't vent on social media or call a friend to complain. I just watched, listened, and kept track. My mother called me the next morning like nothing had happened. Asked if I could help set up for Denise's baby shower next weekend. "You don't have to bring a gift," she added, in that way of hers that actually meant you'd better bring one. I said sure. I always say sure. It's easier. And because the more I said yes, the less they suspected. Meanwhile, I spent my days in the quiet hum of my home office, sunlight pouring over the walnut desk I had custom-made last year. 3 screens, noise-canceling headphones, a whiteboard full of formulas and market trends. My tools were silence and code. While they pictured me lounging in pajamas watching reruns, I was managing a team across 3 time zones. I was negotiating contracts, scaling infrastructure, onboarding investors who were cufflinks worth more than my parents' car. No one asked why I never borrowed money. No one asked why I never missed a birthday, never skipped a gift, never once showed up empty-handed. They assumed it was because I was trying to prove something. They were half right. And then the house next door to my parents went up for sale. It was a beige colonial with overgrown hedges, peeling paint on the porch, and shutters hanging like loose teeth. I knew it from childhood. It belonged to Mrs. Thornton, who used to hand out full-size candy bars on Halloween, and waved to me every morning as I walked to the bus stop. Now it was just an old shell. 1 week later, I closed on it in cash. Didn't even blink. Didn't tell a soul. That was the first move. I didn't buy it to flip it. I didn't buy it for profit. I bought it to make a point. They laughed at the idea of working from home. So I was going to build a monument to it, right where they couldn't ignore it. The real estate agent looked at me funny when I said I wanted the keys immediately. "Are you sure you want this place?" she asked, brushing cobwebs off the entryway with her sleeve. "It needs a lot of work." I smiled. That's the idea. She probably thought I was a first-time buyer, maybe a dreamer with more enthusiasm than budget. But by the time I signed the paperwork, I had already hired a design firm and a contractor, one I'd worked with on my last property in Austin. They knew how to move quickly and quietly. We gutted the place from the inside out. Old plumbing? Ripped out. Warped hardwood floors. Replaced with brushed oak wide plank. Walls? Knocked down for an open-concept kitchen with quartz counters and matte black fixtures. I installed floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room, a smart glass office overlooking the backyard, and a minimalist staircase that felt like something out of a luxury showroom. Even the mailbox looked expensive. No one in the family noticed. Not even my mom, who walked past the place every other morning on her power walks. Maybe she thought it was a flip job. Or maybe she just didn't care unless something had her name on it. Let them think what they wanted. The final touch came when the garage door rolled open to reveal the midnight blue Tesla Model S Plaid I'd custom ordered. It didn't even feel like flexing, it felt like balance. The housewarming was already in motion before the driveway was even paved. I made custom invitations. No joke. Thick cardstock with silver embossing. The front said, "A small celebration. Just next door. Casual attire." Inside, I left the signature blank. I hand-delivered my mother's invitation, sliding it into her mailbox while she was out. I imagined her reaction, maybe a smirk, maybe confusion. She'd probably show up in that same tone she always used when someone surprised her with success, disbelief seasoned with jealousy. But it wouldn't matter. I didn't want revenge in the form of shouting. I wanted silence. Shock. That frozen pause when someone realizes they were so sure, and they were so wrong. I didn't tell them who owned the house. I just told them it was someone worth meeting. The RSVP text started rolling in the next day. My sister Denise replied first. "Of course. Who moved in next door?" My cousin Josh said. "Heard it's some startup guy. Looking forward to it." Even my Uncle Chuck sent back a thumbs-up emoji, which was the digital equivalent of a royal decree from him. But my mother? She didn't respond at all. Not by text, not by call. Which only confirmed what I already suspected: she was curious. She just didn't want to show it. She probably grilled my dad for details he didn't have, probably stalked the property on Google Maps, probably paced the hallway trying to decide whether attending meant admitting anything. Still, I knew she'd come. Pride might delay her, but curiosity always wins. By the end of the week, I watched from the upstairs office window as she walked past the house. She slowed her steps, squinting at the lawn, at the sleek mailbox, at the oversized house number I'd mounted on a matte black steel plate. She didn't look around, just kept walking, like she hadn't noticed anything at all. I smiled. Inside, the place was nearly finished. The furniture was a mix of high-end modern and hand-selected comfort. Italian leather couches, soundproofed walls for my studio, and ambient lighting synced to music. There was a wine fridge stocked with bottles I couldn't pronounce and a hidden panel behind the bookshelf that revealed a media room most people would kill for. The office was the centerpiece. 2 monitors mounted on adjustable arms, a 3D printer in the corner, and framed screenshots of milestones, like the 7-figure acquisition offer I turned down just last quarter. One wall held a brushed metal plaque from Forbes Tech Council. Innovator of the Year, Remote Infrastructure Development. And just above my desk I had it framed, the email confirming my latest contract, $1.2 million over 2 years. I hung it like art. The night before the party, I walked through the house slowly. Not checking for flaws. Just savoring the silence before the storm. I opened the sliding door to the back patio and let the evening breeze in. This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. Let them come. Let them see what working from home builds. The afternoon of the party, I wore jeans and a crisp white button-down, nothing flashy. No watches, no labels. Just clean and confident. Let the house speak. People started showing up right on time, which was already a sign. Usually, family drifts in late, but not today. They were curious. That kind of expensive curiosity people tried to hide behind sunglasses and polite small talk. Denise and her husband were first. She stepped inside, took one look at the floating staircase and said, "Whoa. This place is not what I expected." Josh wandered into the kitchen and audibly whispered, "This is sick," while running his fingers across the counter like he was afraid it might bite. More uncles and aunts arrived, all with the same expression, that forced smile people wear when their brains are trying to catch up with what their eyes are seeing. And then, she arrived. My mother. Pearls. Her favorite beige cardigan. That smile. The one she wore when she wanted to take credit for something she didn't understand. She stepped inside, looked around slowly, and didn't say a word. I greeted her with a warm, neutral, "Glad you came." She kissed the air near my cheek and replied, "I didn't realize you knew the new owner." Her voice was cautious, probing. "I do," I said. "Very well." That was it. I led everyone on the casual tour. The kitchen. The living room. The guest suite with heated floors and its own espresso machine. Every detail intentional. Every silence loaded. When we reached the office, I waited. Let them enter first. The plaque caught their eyes first. The screens. The gear. The glass desk with its minimalist aesthetic, and not a single cable in sight. Denise leaned in. "Wait, this is your setup?" I smiled. "Has been for a while." Josh laughed, confused. "Dude, what?" My uncle raised an eyebrow. "So this is your house?" And I nodded. Just once. The air shifted. You could feel it. Jaws didn't drop, but eyes darted. Someone exhaled. A few tried to laugh, like it was some elaborate joke. My father, silent until now, muttered, "You bought the house next door?" I turned to my mother. Her face, frozen in something between pride and panic, was exactly what I'd waited for. And then I said it. Calmly. No heat, no malice. Just clarity. "Guess working from home makes you more of a man than yelling across the dinner table." The room went quiet. No one moved. And for the first time in my life, my mother had no words. You know that kind of silence where even the clock seems scared to tick? That's what filled the room after I said it. My mother stood perfectly still, fingers tightening around the strap of her purse. She wasn't blinking. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was the realization that the narrative she'd been crafting all these years was falling apart right in front of the family she worked so hard to impress. "Sweetheart," she finally managed, forcing a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We were only joking that night. You know how we are." I didn't flinch. "I remember exactly how you are." That shut her up. My cousin Josh cleared his throat and muttered, "Dang," under his breath, then gave me one of those quick, sideways nods guys give when they're too stunned to say they're impressed. My Uncle Chuck, ever the opportunist, suddenly piped up with, "Well, Kyle, you really did good for yourself. This is incredible." Like he'd always believed in me. My dad didn't say anything. He just stared at the plaque on the wall like it was written in a language he never learned to read. "Denise?" She had moved from surprise to curiosity. "So wait, what do you actually do? Like for work?" "Remote infrastructure development. Scalable architecture for cloud-based systems," I replied, keeping it short on purpose. She nodded slowly like she understood, but her glazed eyes told a different story. My mother was still standing there, lips parted like she wanted to rewind the last 10 minutes and start over. Like maybe if she changed the tone of her voice or threw in a, "We're proud of you," it would rewrite the past. But the past was already written. And now it was displayed in every tile, every appliance, every recessed ceiling light humming softly above their heads. They kept wandering around after that, offering compliments that were more for their own benefit than mine. "This view is amazing. I love this backsplash. Where did you find that dining set?" But I didn't need their praise. I already had what I came for, the silence, the recalibration, the shattered assumptions falling like snow in their minds. And most importantly, the look in my mother's eyes when she realized. She didn't raise me. She underestimated me. And that made all the difference. After the office reveal, the tone of the party shifted. The people who used to talk over me at family gatherings were suddenly hanging on my every word. They wanted to know where I got the wine glasses. What kind of espresso machine I used. What it was like being your own boss. Nobody asked if I was still looking for work, a question I'd heard every holiday since 2016. Now I was the interesting one. But I didn't gloat. I just smiled, offered drinks, played host like it was any other day. The more polite and quiet I stayed, the more it unspooled them. At one point, I caught my father standing alone in the garage, staring at the Tesla. He reached out to touch the hood like it might disappear if he blinked too fast. When he saw me, he cleared his throat. "Nice car," he said. "Thanks." He nodded. "You always liked gadgets." It was the closest he'd come to a compliment in years. I let it sit there. I didn't need more than that. Back inside, my mother had finally found her voice, sort of. She hovered near the kitchen island, talking to Denise and one of the aunts, all of them pretending to admire the pantry layout while clearly trying to piece together the timeline of how I'd gotten here. "He must have saved well," one of them whispered. "Or inherited something," another guessed. My mother just nodded slowly, tight-lipped. I knew what she was thinking. How did I miss this? It wasn't that she wanted to be proud of me, it's that she wanted to own that pride. And now, she couldn't. Not without admitting she'd been wrong. And that was never her strong suit. The best part? The people who'd laughed that night at the dinner table, the ones who chimed in. "Yeah, real men get out there and grind." They were the loudest now. "Kyle, you've got to give me advice, man." "You hiring?" "I'm trying to get out of this commute." Even my cousin Dylan, who once joked I was living off cereal and Wi-Fi, asked if I could help him set up a side hustle. I told him to send over a deck. He didn't know what that meant. My mother made one last attempt before she left. As she put on her coat at the door, she looked around the foyer, at the sleek lights, the minimalist coat rack, the polished floors. She sighed. "Well, I guess working from home isn't so bad after all." I just smiled. "It's not." By the time the sun dipped behind the trees, the soft amber lighting inside cast long shadows against the clean white walls. The house took on this warm, museum-like glow, like everything had been curated. Even the silence. The guests began to drift out in pairs and small clusters, but they didn't leave quickly. They lingered. As if leaving too soon meant they hadn't absorbed it all yet. They offered half-hearted thanks, smiles that didn't reach their eyes. People who once treated me like the odd man out now shook my hand with both of theirs. Called me sir. Told me they were so impressed. And every time someone left, I watched them glance back over their shoulder at the house. At me. I knew what they were thinking. How long has he been this far ahead of us? But there was one last thing I hadn't shown them yet. One last bit of theater. As the stragglers gathered in the living room, sipping what remained of the drinks and politely trying not to look too out of place, I pulled up the smart display on the wall and tapped a few buttons. A projection lit up on the opposite wall. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. It was a series of screenshots and images, the app's user interface, download stats, a press clipping, and then, finally, the plaque. $1.2 million partnership signed Q2. Global rollout begins next month. My cousin muttered something under his breath. My mother stared, blinking like her eyes were playing tricks on her. She stepped closer, just a little. As if proximity would rewrite the story she told herself for years, that I was lost, indecisive, not quite real-world enough to be counted. And then it hit her. This wasn't a hobby. This wasn't some tech thing. This was legacy. She turned to me, her voice small. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked her dead in the eye and replied, quiet and steady. "You never asked? You just assumed." There it was. No yelling. No anger. Just a simple mirror held up to years of dismissal. She opened her mouth again, but this time, nothing came out. My dad stepped forward like he was going to smooth things over, say something wise and fatherly, but even he knew better now. He just gave a shallow nod. The kind you give a man you don't recognize anymore, but know you probably should have. And still, I didn't gloat. I thanked them for coming. I offered leftovers. I walked them out like any good host would. Because it wasn't about rubbing it in. It was about never needing to again. Once the door finally clicked shut behind the last guest, I stood in the entryway for a long time, just listening to the quiet. Not the kind of quiet that fills a lonely house, but the kind that hums after a storm. Calm. Final. Like the moment after a curtain falls. I walked slowly back into the office, where the plaque still glowed faintly on the wall. The same one they'd stared at like it was a foreign object. I leaned on the edge of my desk and looked around, not at the furniture or the screens, but at the space. This wasn't just a room. It was the battlefield they didn't even know we'd fought on. And I'd won without a single raised voice. My phone buzzed. A text from Denise. "Hey, just wanted to say, your place is amazing. I didn't realize you were doing so well. Hope we can catch up soon?" A few years ago, that message would have meant the world to me. Now? I read it, locked the screen, and set the phone down. I didn't need closure from anyone. Tonight had been the closure. Their reactions, their rewrites, their sudden interest, they were just the echo of a shift they couldn't undo. Around 10 o'clock I heard footsteps on gravel. I looked out the side window. It was my mother. Alone. She stood by the edge of my lawn, arms folded, gazing at the house like it had grown there overnight. Like maybe if she stared long enough, she could see the years she missed. The late nights, the failure, the rebuilding, the doubt, the grind. She didn't come to the door. She just stood there. And for a second, I wondered if she was trying to muster the courage to ring the bell. Maybe say something she hadn't said in years. Maybe even apologize. But she didn't. She turned. Walked back next door. And I realized something. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about making her feel small, or rubbing her nose in what she never believed I could do. It was about truth. I didn't need her validation. I just needed her to know the truth. That the quiet son, the one who worked from home, the one she mocked for not wearing a tie, had built something real. Something that would last. In the days that followed, things got quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. No more jabs at dinner. No more sideways glances. Just space. Space they were finally giving me, not because I demanded it, but because they saw me now. Maybe not fully. But enough. I didn't buy that house to show off. I bought it so I'd never have to raise my voice to be heard again. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the best way to speak is by doing. You don't need to fight for respect. You build. You grow. You wait. And when the moment comes, you let your life speak for itself. So if you've ever felt dismissed, underestimated, quietly mocked for not fitting the mold, don't waste your breath trying to prove them wrong. Just make sure that one day, they have to see it with their own eyes. And when they do, you won't need to say a word.